WWE held its second Saturday night's main event show of the year last night in Tampa, which was at least a newsworthy show. If you were watching it for great pro wrestling, you didn't get much of that here. But we did have two big returns and a major match announced for Money in the Bank. And, I was thinking about this. The thing with those old Saturday night's main event shows, you did get great pro wrestling matches sometimes. You got some classic matches on there. But it was really a show designed to push whatever the next big show was with some big angles. But you would still get those big matches, and it really did feel like a big deal because back then you didn't get to see people like Hulk Hogan on TV every week, or Randy Savage against Bret Hart, or the Rockers against the Hart Foundation, or Andre the Giant against the Ultimate Warrior, or whatever it was. We would get stuff like that on NBC, not on the syndicated shows. And the pay-per-views were few and far between when Saturday night's main event first started. It was really just WrestleMania. Survivor Series didn't even start until '87. So the show served a real purpose. Today, there's no need for Saturday night's main event. I like the whole throwback element to it. I think that's cool. There really is no need for this show. Not when we have 2.5 hours of Raw every Monday. We have 3 hours of SmackDown every Friday, plus the monthly PLEs. It's just not necessary. But 4 times a year, they get 2 hours of primetime network TV. And so they slap together 4 or 5 matches, and they go with the retro vibe, which, again, I enjoy. That's honestly my favorite part of these shows. It's not even the matches. It's the dopamine hit that I get when I hear that music and I see Jesse Ventura back on my TV. Because how many more times are we going to realistically, get to see that? The man is 73 years old. But with all the hours of wrestling that we already get every week, this show offers nothing that I can't already get from them somewhere else. And usually much better. That was the case again last night. Not a single match stood out as anything that I'm going to remember in a week. The NXT and AEW shows tonight are going to blow away what we got on NBC last night, and it won't even be close. The over commercialization of these shows doesn't help either. It's one of the worst things about the Netflix era, or the TKO era, whatever you want to call it. I didn't catch the show live because it's Memorial Day weekend. I had other plans, but I watched it when I got home. And one of the things that people were complaining about in my mentions were the insane number of commercials on the show. Now, thankfully, Peacock allowed me to go back and start from the beginning, even though the show was still on. Because I've had issues with Peacock in the past not allowing me to do that. And I just fast forwarded through all the commercial breaks. So it didn't annoy me as much as I know it did some of you. But the commercials are just a killer because the matches are not very long to begin with. So by the time they're back from their second commercial break of the match, like in a 13-minute match, you're lucky if you see 6 or 7 minutes of actual wrestling. But it was also a very predictable show. I nailed all 5 of them from my SmackDown review, right down the list. We had 5 matches, including a women's United States Championship match that was only added to the show the night before on SmackDown. I thought it was odd, going into this, before they made that announcement on Friday. I thought it was very odd not to have a single women's match announced on this show when they are about to make a big fuss about doing another Evolution all-women's PLE. I didn't honestly give a shit either way, personally. It was just very odd to me. And then they added Chelsea Green against Zelina Vega at the very last minute. And having now seen the match, it was largely a waste of time. I would have rather they cut the match and bring back the pre-match promos that they used to do on Saturday night's main event back in the day. They have all these retro elements in the show. I think the only backstage interview they did was actually for the women's match. They had Chelsea Green back there with Piper Niven and Alba Fire behind her right before she went out to the ring. But why not do proper backstage interviews in the back before key matches? If time management is an issue, then just do 4 matches instead of 5 and use some of that extra time either to make some of the matches longer or add in a key promo before the tag match and backstage promos before the entrances for the main event, right? I just feel like their time would be better spent doing something like that and making the existing matches feel bigger. Imagine pitching it to the back with Rollins and Breakker and Heyman right before they go out to the ring for their match. And then after they enter, They're in the ring. You go back to the backstage area. You do the same thing with CM Punk and Sami Zayn, just to get the audience fired up for what they're about to see. That was the opening match. It was CM Punk and Sami Zayn against Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. This was the best match by default on the entire show. It was a fun opener, fun enough. Sami was setting up for the haluva kick to Braun when Heyman grabbed his foot. And as the referee scolded him for it, and with Sami distracted, Bronson Reed appears at ringside, and he splashes CM Punk through the timekeeper's barricade. Now, Sami sees this. He's distracted by this. When he turns around, he eats a spear from Breaker, and then he eats the pin. Sami was eating well last night. So then Reed got into the ring after the match as Breaker's dropping the straps. It looks like they're about to throw down when Rollins throws his arms around Bronson Reed, who hugs him back. And Reed then puts his hand out to shake Braun Breaker's hand, and Breaker reciprocated. It looked like Breaker didn't know about any of this, and he was ready to fight. But when he realized it was all part of the plan, he was okay with it. It's not like he was consulted about it in advance. I like Bronson Reed as the third man here. I'm a little surprised because I figured Braun was the ass kicker of the group. Now they have two. But I like it. And I like that he's right back in a main spot on the show. That was a very gnarly injury at Survivor Series. And something he should never, ever do again. Okay, coming off the top of the cage like that was very stupid. I didn't even have him figured into anything until the summer. I wasn't expecting him to be back this soon. So seeing him out there was a genuine surprise to me, and I didn't see anything leaked about it, in advance or anything. But that's a big addition back to that Raw roster. And I also like the idea of him being in a group. I think he fit in very well with the Bloodline heading into War Games last year. And I wonder if he would have ended up as a permanent part of the Bloodline. Like Solo's Bloodline, had he not gotten hurt, and if they would have moved him over to SmackDown in the transfer window. Because they moved a bunch of names around, right? McIntyre went from Raw to SmackDown, as did Damian Priest, and they shuffled other people around as well. So maybe Bronson Reed would have been moved over to SmackDown, and he would have been part of the Bloodline. So instead of being in the top heel group on SmackDown, he'll be in the top heel group now on Raw. And he can work matches against CM Punk and Sami Zayn and maybe Jey Uso. The only thing they have to do is have Rollins and Reed explain things on Raw tomorrow night, because these two have a shared history together, and it's not a friendly one. Reed is the one who put Rollins out of action with those 6 tsunamis, which is really what kicked off the Bronson Reed super push on Raw last summer. So that has to be addressed, but that's easy enough for them to do. All Rollins has to do is come out tomorrow night and say, I gained a lot of respect for this man when he and I were butting heads last year, what he did to me. I'm willing to let bygones be bygones and look at the bigger picture. They call me a visionary. I see the greater vision here. This is the kind of man I want to be in my corner. Like, it could be a very simple explanation like that, but I like it. I like his addition to the group. We have Zelina Vega against Chelsea Green for the United States Championship. This went 5 minutes, and it was your standard television match. There was a botched 619 by Zelina that ended up busting up Chelsea's nose. At least I think that's what did it. I didn't see the blood until later on, a couple of spots later, but Chelsea was holding her nose after the 619. It looked like shit. And then from the ropes, Zelina delivered an Avalanche Code Red to retain the title. There was nothing to this. Now, Zelina took the pin in the Money in the Bank qualifying match on Friday night against Charlotte Flair and Julia. Julia pinned her. And with any hope coming out of Money in the Bank, assuming Julia is not winning the briefcase, Julia will be the one to take that title off of Zelina Vega, because that title needs it more than anything right now. It needs to be on somebody who I think they are going to give a big push to. And a pretty dominant one, too. That's never going to happen with Zelina Vega. Chelsea Green, I like Chelsea, but she's treated like a comedy character. That's what she is. That title needs somebody like Julia with a big push behind it. And so I say let her have it and let her go on a run with it, coming out of Money in the Bank. Then we had John Cena against R-Truth. Truth was out there on Friday doing his best to promote the match, but we never got a single promo segment in the ring with these two men in the lead up to this match. This was the very definition of filler. We want to have John Cena on the show. What are we going to do with him? Because we don't have a big match planned for him until Money in the Bank 2 weeks later. This just goes to what I said about the status of Saturday night's main event being a very unnecessary show, right? They advertised Cena for Tampa. He's on his retirement tour. We need him to do something on the show. And this is what they came up with for him. It was the very definition of filler. The fans reacted to Cena because it's his retirement tour and they knew it was their last chance to see him live. Those who don't go to wrestling shows outside the state, they could always travel somewhere else and go see John Cena. But if you wanted to see him in Tampa, then I don't expect them to be back there this year. And so Truth comes out to Cena's music. He dressed like him. He did his full entrance, which even Cena isn't doing anymore. Cena did his trademark spots. Then Truth did those same trademark spots. Cena brought the belt into the ring and threatened to use it, but then he stopped, like he was having second thoughts. And then he handed the belt back to the referee. And as the referee went to go dispose of the belt, Truth was celebrating like he finally got through to this man. And Cena kicked him in the dick and delivered an attitude adjustment for the win. No dick is safe in this company for the rest of this year. This didn't even last as long as the women's match did. This was to this show what Brock Lesnar against Bob Holly was at the Royal Rumble in 2004. Only here the title wasn't on the line. I don't expect much out of John Cena anymore. He's either physically limited in what he can do or what he's willing to do, so as not to jeopardize any of his movie projects. Whatever it is, you get what you get out of Cena at this point, which isn't a whole hell of a lot. This heel turn sucks. It is what it is. It was doomed the moment he kicked Cody in the dick in Toronto and then stood next to The Rock and got everybody's hopes up for something that was never even meant to be. Cena is there to play his greatest hits, which weren't even that great to begin with, until he drops the belt back to Cody. That's where this is headed, and then he will ride off into the sunset. Now, on that note, in the back after this, Jey Uso was walking when he came across John Cena. And Jey said, the last time that I saw you, I threw you out of the Royal Rumble. Cena said he was happy that Jey remembered the last time they saw each other. He's looking forward to the next time they see each other. He said, wouldn't it be something if Logan Paul were to beat you for that World Heavyweight title, causing the world title to end up in the hands of a YouTuber? And Cena told Jey that he would be watching his defense against Logan later in the night very closely. They announced the match for Worlds Collide on June 7th between El Hijo del Vikingo and Chad Gable, not El Grande Americano. I wonder if Gable's going to be working double duty on that show. They haven't announced the full card yet. So they actually aired AAA footage of Vikingo, and then they showed Vikingo live in the crowd. It was wild seeing AAA footage airing on NBC. So that makes two matches now officially announced for that Worlds Collide show. They already announced Legado del Fantasma in a trios match against Psycho Clown, Pagano, and El Hijo de Dr. Wagner Jr. By the way, the legends that they invited to this show last night and they showed on camera were Jimmy Hart, the ageless wonder himself, Bushwhacker Luke, Barry Windham, and Mike Rotunda, who I believe may have been in the very first match on Saturday night's main event ever, Tatanka, and Leilani Kai. And also Jesse Ventura. He's a legend too. They had him back at the podium for a few stand-up shots throughout the show with Joe Tessitore, reading off of his obviously prepared comments, because there are things that Jesse Ventura says on these shows that Jesse Ventura would never think to say unless he was told to say it. And he did commentary for his one obligatory match of the night, which was the steel cage match between Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre. The same Drew McIntyre who has been working hurt and has said that he cannot turn his head all the way to the left. That should have told you right there who was winning this match. Now, it'd be bad enough for Damian Priest to go in there and lose to McIntyre after he just lost to him at WrestleMania, but to lose to somebody who can't even turn their head to the left, now that would just be humiliating. See, I would just fight the guy from his left side. That would be my strategy. I don't know why you would go out and say that publicly in an interview, because I would just come at him from the left side the entire time. But yes, that would be humiliating. like the Knicks dropping 2 to the Pacers in Madison Square Garden. Jesse said that they were making history here because back in his day, NBC never would have showed a cage match on TV. Not only did they air cage matches during Saturday Night's Main Event back in the day, Jesse was on commentary for the 2 that they did. I think Jesse is finally starting to lose it. You win this by pinfall, submission, or escape the cage. Priest tried to climb out over the cage at one point, only for McIntyre to catch him and superplex him off the top back into the ring. The old Hogan Bossman spot. Then he kipped up and he hit a Claymore kick, but Priest kicked out. You know, I have to mention this too. And maybe this was the case with the last edition as well. When they did the intro to the show, they do that intro where they show that vintage TV and they, somebody is flipping channels and they show some old highlights of Saturday Night's Main Event. And then you hear Obsession by Animotion and it goes into a more, modern intro. It is very odd how they do not show Hulk Hogan in any of those highlights at all. And I know, Hogan is not exactly beloved by a lot of the WWE audience these days. God knows I shit on him for all the stupid shit that he says every single week. But it's still very weird. Like you to not even include any highlights. Like you see Savage and Perfect and Andre and DiBiase and like all these people, and they actively avoid showing anything involving Hogan, who of course was the star of Saturday Night's Main Event. Like there would be no Saturday Night's Main Event at all were it not for Hogan being, he was the top guy back then. He was the feature attraction on so many of those shows. And I don't know, it's a very odd thing, because they have this partnership with him and his Real American Beer. And so I see commercials for his fucking beer. He's in them like every single week on TV. When I see the commercials, and yet to just completely cut him out of any of those highlights at the beginning of the show is just, I don't know, it's just very petty to me. Even I have to say that. Like, that's just very, very weird. So anyway, superplex spot, Claymore kick connects, Priest kicks out. McIntyre hits Priest with his own South of Heaven chokeslam for a near fall. And Drew then worked over Priest with one of the 2 steel chairs that he introduced into the cage at the beginning of the match. And on commentary, Jesse wondered if the referees get full pay because the referee just has to count the fall. They don't actually do anything else, right? They're just there to count the fall. And he was also calling into question some of the referees' counts as not being fast enough. This has become a recurring theme now where he calls the referees' counts into question. And it pains me because this man was the voice of reason back in the day. Like, yeah, he was a heel commentator also, but like he would call things pretty fairly on stuff like that. And every time he's called referee counts into question on these shows, like every single time, and then they replay the count, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the referee's count. Like, it's not even close or like debatable. Like, well, okay, maybe they counted a little slow, or maybe they counted a little fast, or maybe that was a 3. Like, no, there's nothing wrong with the count. It's like just the old man ranting at the cloud. McIntyre wedged the other chair into the corner, and he tried for another Claymore. He's going to Claymore him into the chair. Priest moved, and McIntyre kicked the chair instead. Priest set the chair up, and he drove McIntyre down throat first into it. And now with McIntyre laying down face first on the chair, Priest grabbed the other one, and he delivered a concerto. And Michael Cole mentioned that Priest used that same move to eliminate his mentor, Edge, years ago. Yes, that Edge fellow who has not been seen or heard from since the Judgment Day kicked him out. I don't know whatever happened to that guy. So at this point, Priest had the option of pinning McIntyre. All he has to do is roll him over and pin him. Instead, he opts to walk out of the cage through the door. And he stands on the steps right before he's about to touch the floor. He stops and he looks back at McIntyre and he said something, and then he just proceeded to walk down onto the floor in very underwhelming fashion to win this match. Underwhelming was certainly how the crowd reacted to it. And Jesse Ventura was apoplectic about this. He blasts Damian Priest for walking out the door instead of climbing out over the top of the cage, which, to be fair, if you're going to leave the cage and the door is right there, like, why would this 7-foot-tall man have to climb out over the cage? He should have pinned him. That's what he should have done. He should have pinned him. And instead, Jesse's here calling him out for it and calling him a coward. You know, the escape the cage rule in a situation like this is fucking idiotic. These two men have had a blood feud now for the better part of a year, okay? Off and on. Priest has talked about how personal it's gotten between the two of them. And the only way to settle things is to lock them in a cage. And then he wins and he blows off the feud by walking out the door. You know, a lot of people hate the escape the cage rule. It was something that really, it started with Vince's father in the 70s, I believe. I don't want to say it never happened in any other territory and he invented it, but it was popularized in the WWF, like when Bruno was champion. And, you know, Vince Jr. continued it through the Saturday Night's Main Event era with the blue bar cage. And a lot of people hated that rule. I liked it because I grew up on it, but I also think you can build some real drama around it in certain situations. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love that Brett and Owen cage match so much from SummerSlam in '94. It's still the greatest cage match to me. So, like, I would always defend its usage, but there is no defense for it here. Like, I cannot defend this. I am with Jesse on this one. And he had the quote of the night. He goes, "That was exciting, wasn't it? Walk out the door." Like, I love it. I love it. He completely buried the finish, and deservedly so. And I'm sure Michael Cole had his head in his hands as he was listening to this. He was trying to defend it by pointing out, well, Jesse, those are the rules. You know, Priest did nothing wrong. But like, once Jesse gets going, you can't stop him. But it sounds like McIntyre is taking an extended break, and we're not going to be seeing him for a while, which would be a big loss for SmackDown, you know, if he's going to be gone for months. But if he's banged up and he wants time off to heal, and he can't move his fucking head all the way to the left, then the man deserves time off. The main event was Jey Uso against Logan Paul for the World Heavyweight Championship. What you saw last night was the result of the two of them practicing and rehearsing the match at Logan's house in the ring he has built there in Puerto Rico. He has to practice all of his big matches, and this was the end result. It was not great. Late in the match, Logan held on for dear life to the second turnbuckle as Jey was pulling him, and finally he pulled back and Logan went backwards and he ripped the pad off, and that would come into play later. Logan went for his imitation buckshot lariat, which Michael Cole called the snapshot lariat, but he vaulted right into a super kick by Jey Uso. Jey attempted the spear, but he got sent into the exposed middle turnbuckle, which allowed Logan to hit him with the hard right hand, and still he only got a near fall out of it. Uso recovered, he delivered a super kick followed by a splash off the top, and seemingly had the match won when someone pulled the referee out of the ring, and that someone was John Cena, who got into the ring and attacked Jey Uso until Kingdom hit. And out sprints Cody Rhodes for the first time since WrestleMania. He hit Cena with a crossroads, which Cena did not take well. Logan tried to sneak up on him with the brass knucks. Jey, though, intercepted with a spear. Uso splash followed. The referee gets back into the ring and counts the 3. How John Cena pulling the referee out of the ring did not result in an automatic disqualification is a mystery to me. But they were running out of time, so Cody quickly grabbed the microphone. He said he was sorry the Cena farewell tour ran through Rhodes country. And he said Cena has a partner in Logan Paul, and he has a brother in Jey. So he and Jey would see Cena and Logan at Money in the Bank. And right after he said bank, they went off the air. So he got it in right at the buzzer. So now we know why Gunther is getting his World Heavyweight Championship match on Raw on June 9th and not at Money in the Bank. Because they're doing a tag team match with the WWE Champion on one side and the World Heavyweight Champion on the other side. Which also extends the Jey Uso-Logan Paul feud for a couple more weeks. I'm actually relieved because it sounded like we were going to get John Cena and Travis Scott doing something, and instead it's John Cena and Logan Paul, which I'll take over Travis Scott. Hopefully I didn't just jinx it and it ends up turning into a 6-man tag. I saw that being talked about this week also. John Cena tagging with Logan Paul, though, on his retirement tour. Like that, if that isn't everything that's wrong with this John Cena retirement tour, I don't know what is. But Cody returning was a big angle to end things on. You know, they opened with Bronson Reed joining the Heyman Alliance. They ended with Cody laying out Cena and announcing a big Money in the Bank match. You can't say it wasn't a newsworthy show, but if you watch this show for the wrestling, bleh. If you watched it for any returns or shocking moments, you got a couple of those and not much else. This was a very missable show.